for many years. And Ms. Abigail Tyler has been extremely involved in this process, not just in the recent weeks, but years. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, Ms. Buggs.
I'll just formally begin it so people can hear your remarks.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Oh, you're so serious. Yes, this naming of committee meeting has begun, and as you know, this conversation about naming of our new school in the Bellevue area has been a long time coming, and Miss Abigail Tyler, who is of that area and represents that district, has been very involved in that process, not just in the past few weeks, but over several months, if not years, with her longstanding community history and, of course, living in that area. So before we get started with any discussion or motion, I would like for her to give us her community report, as she has been highly involved in receiving that information and getting it from members of her community. So Ms. Tyler, if you'll please share that with us.
Thank you, Chairwoman Elrod. So just to give everybody just a super quick overview, the final survey for the high school asked responders to rate each name separately. They either rated it as they loved it, they liked it, it's all right, don't really like it, or hate it. And that allowed every name to stand on its own because somebody could love more than one name. So looking at our final numbers, the community supports the names Bellevue and James Lawson the most. So if we're going down our list, if we look at Bellevue High School, this would name the school after its physical location in the Bellevue community. Most of the high schools in MNPS are named after their physical location, and the name Bellevue consistently performed well in all the surveys and at our community meeting. Students in both middle schools and our high school voted Bellevue as their first choice overall, and in the final survey, Bellevue had the most "I love it" responses. As a community, Bellevue has a long history of rallying around and supporting its public schools. Even after the original Bellevue High School was closed, the Bellevue community continued to support Hillwood, and today, more than half of Hillwood's student body comes from the Bellevue area. As someone who was born and raised in Bellevue, I have borne witness to and personally benefited from the community investment in our public zoned schools, first as a student, then as a teacher, and now as a parent. The commitment to community does not end at public education, but can be seen any time a crisis arises. I've participated alongside my neighbors in ripping out carpets and drywall after the 2010 flood that hit our area really hard, and in regularly donating money and supplies to our local food bank. Bellevue not only does what it can to take care of its community members, it also has a heart for anyone who falls on hard times. I've been part of volunteer groups from Bellevue who went to nearby areas to help clean up after the tornadoes, both the one in '98 and last year. And I've witnessed overflowing donations of food and water, clothes, money, whatever else was requested to fill a specific need after any number of nearby natural disasters. Bellevue exemplifies what a strong community can do to have one another's backs, whether it's helping a school or a family. I would be proud to name this new high school after the Bellevue community. Now, for kind of moving down our list of recommendations that's about Bellevue, the next two names I'm going to lump together because it was Bellwood and Hillview, which are both combinations of Bellevue and Hillwood. And while Bellwood gathered slightly more support than Hillview overall, the names gathered the first and second most "I hate it" responses overall. So I would, due to that strong negative response, I would not recommend either name for consideration. And then now we're looking at our names to honor people. In looking at the final survey, James Lawson came in a close second to the name Bellevue. James Lawson was also the second name overall from the survey sent to our middle and high school students. And because James Lawson is a person who is still alive, he must meet stringent standards to be considered. So let's look at his history really quick. James Lawson grew up in Ohio and, like his father and grandfather before him, became a minister. During a missionary trip to India, he studied a form of nonviolent resistance developed by Gandhi that would shape his response to racism in America. Martin Luther King Jr. also embraced the same principles, and he described Lawson as the leading nonviolence theorist in the world. King encouraged Lawson to move to the South, saying, "Don't wait, come now. We don't have anyone like you in the South." So Lawson moved to Nashville to attend Vanderbilt Divinity School in 1958, and he began teaching nonviolence training workshops to local students. He trained many of the future leaders of the civil rights movement, including Diane Nash, Bernard Lafayette, and John Lewis. And when asked about James Lawson years later, John Lewis said, "I couldn't have found a better teacher than Jim Lawson. I truly felt, and still feel today, that he was God sent." When Lawson's students were arrested for sit-ins at Nashville lunch counters, his role in their education was brought to light, and Vanderbilt told him to end his involvement with the sit-ins. When Lawson refused, they expelled him from Divinity School and had him arrested. In 1961, the decision was made to abandon the Freedom Ride efforts due to arson and attacks. And Lawson said, if the rides had stopped, it would have been seen as a defeat. And so he went on to help develop and implement strategy for a second wave of Freedom Riders. He was part of a group that was arrested and subsequently met with the Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, who went on to order desegregation of interstate travel. In 1962, Lawson moved to Memphis to pastor a Methodist church there. He continued to stay involved in the civil rights movement, which included workers' rights as well. Lawson invited Martin Luther King Jr. to come speak in support of the Memphis sanitation strike in 1968, which he accepted. Sadly, King was assassinated the day after his speech there. Reverend Lawson was invited to return to teach at Vanderbilt Divinity School in 2006, where he received a formal apology for his expulsion. He taught on campus as a distinguished visiting professor from 2006 to 2009, and he donated his personal papers to the school in 2013. The role Reverend Lawson played in the civil rights movement means his name meets our criteria for an extraordinarily exceptional principal legacy. And his contribution in shaping Nashville's role in the civil rights movement means that he has made substantial historic significance to Nashville's history. Both of those are part of our naming policy. He more than meets the criteria for naming a school after someone still living, and he is extremely deserving of the honor to have a school named James Lawson. So our final name on the list, although he is not still alive, the name Cecil Branstetter must also be subject to stringent criteria to be considered. So his history. Cecil Branstetter was born in 1920 in Deer Lodge, Tennessee, in Morgan County. Growing up in the poorest county in Tennessee, Cecil recognized the value of education and its ability to change lives for the better. He began his schooling in a one-room schoolhouse, and when he graduated high school, he knew his best chance of success was to continue his education. The first in his family to attend college, he hitchhiked to the doorstep of Lincoln Memorial University carrying every possession he owned in a cigar box, without an acceptance letter, but with a fierce determination to learn. He was given work milking cows to pay for his tuition and lodgings, but once he experienced the dismal working conditions, he organized his fellow dairy workers to improve everybody's lot and was subsequently kicked out of the school. After signing up to serve in World War II, Branstetter was able to finish his degree at George Washington University and study at Oxford University in England thanks to the GI Bill. After the war, he moved to Nashville and attended Vanderbilt Law School. When Branstetter and his wife Charlotte moved to Bellevue in the 1950s, the area was still mostly farmland. He quickly became known within Bellevue as someone you could call if you needed help, whether your car got stuck in a ditch or one of your cattle escaped onto the road. Branstetter was the kind of person who showed up. On a larger scale, he dedicated his life to giving a voice to the downtrodden and powerless, and championed what he knew was right, regardless of the personal consequences. He was elected to serve in the Tennessee General Assembly, where he passed legislation for women to serve on juries. His decision to champion women's rights cost him his seat in the next election. As an attorney, he was widely considered one of the best litigators in the state. He's best known for his tireless representation of working people, organized labor, and his attempts to halt the closing of Highlander Folk School during the Civil Rights Movement. Although the state successfully argued to close Highlander Folk School, Branstetter was able to win a finding that the provision in Tennessee's Constitution that banned blacks and whites from learning in the same classroom was unenforceable, which meant that Branstetter's work on that case completely opened the door to our integrated public schools in Tennessee. Additionally, Branstetter was part of a group of attorneys who represented Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, John Lewis, and all of the students who had been involved in the Nashville sit-ins after they were arrested. He continued to represent civil rights leaders long after the sit-ins achieved their purpose. It was this sustained involvement that prompted Martin Luther King Jr. to write in a letter of support to Highlander Folk School that, quote, "The hope of the future rests upon dedicated lawyers like Cecil Branstetter," end quote. Despite attempts to smear his name for his involvement in civil rights, Branstetter continued his steadfast work to represent those without power and to create a better world for all. One of the more tangible ways he did this was his perseverance in helping to shape and write the Metro Charter that created the government we all live under today in Davidson County. Having grown up farming and continuing to run a working farm while he fought battles in court, Branstetter deeply understood the importance of a healthy environment. In 1970, he co-founded the Tennessee Environmental Council as a means to tie together many different organizations who had common priorities in order to focus their advocacy in the legislature on behalf of Tennessee's environment. In addition to serving as the president of the Tennessee Environmental Council, Branstetter was also a president of the Tennessee Conservation League, and he served on the boards of the Metropolitan Human Rights Commission and the Tennessee Civil Liberties Union, among others. Looking back at Cecil Branstetter's legacy, he has made an outstanding contribution to the progress of the city of Nashville through both his community and civic actions, and his many accomplishments align with MNPS's mission, vision, and core values and beliefs, all part of our naming policy again. He clearly meets the criteria for naming a school after someone, and it's also important to note that Cecil Branstetter considered himself and his family champions of the Bellevue community. Cecil and Charlotte both lived in Bellevue until their deaths. 3 of his 4 children continue to live out there, and several of his grandchildren also continue to call Bellevue their home, myself included. As Cecil Branstetter's granddaughter, I find that I cannot be unbiased in this decision. I do want to say Branstetter gathered enough community support to be in that original top list of names, and I checked. None of those suggestions came from my family. I checked. But because of my connection to him, I really struggled with whether or not it was appropriate to put forth his name, and so I opted not to because I didn't want anything to look like I was manipulating things, so I did not include it. But after I passed this information on to Chairwoman Buggs and let the chair of this committee, Ms. Elrod, know, I was advised to include him in the final survey because the community had organically chosen him, and it wouldn't be fair or honest to not include a name that meets both the naming criteria and community demand. So, since sending that final survey, because of my close familial connection to Cecil Branstetter, I've stepped back from the process, and I am now bound to recuse myself from this particular vote. If the vote is the final vote, once that is made and the decision is made, I will not be voting between names, and so I would be able to vote on the final one during our board meeting at the end. But when it comes to choosing between these names that have given to us, there's no way I can be unbiased about the name Cecil Branstetter. I just can't. If you want to know more good stuff about him, you just let me know. I love him. So I will sit back and let you guys continue.
Thank you, Ms. Tyler, for your very thorough report on everyone involved, and I appreciate that so much. I appreciate everyone's attendance. As you see in front of you, we have a series of names that are listed that we can choose from. I'm going to make the motion, and then we'll have discussion. My motion is that we name the school after James Lawson. Do I have a second?
Bugs.
Okay.
I'll second.
I was gonna say, I believe that was Ms. Bugs. Chair Bugs, excuse me, Chair. All right, do we have any discussion? Yes, Frida. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Player Peters. I apologize.
That's good. I actually knew well, I didn't know your grandfather. I've spoken to your grandfather before I knew you existed, Abigail, or Miss Tyler, when I was part of the Legal and Voters and had to re-up the membership and actually had the pleasure of talking to your grandfather. And to acknowledge his work as someone who's, a minor student, a student of Fisk University, but more importantly, also my work through Metro government, hearing your grandfather's legacy, particularly when it came to the Metro Charter, has to be noted. If anyone who sat through any charter revision committees understand his presence and his voice and his wisdom and legacy should not go unnoted. For us to have a Metro Charter that is well formed and well constituted is a legacy to your grandfather and what he did to Metro government. And I just want to acknowledge that because also in addition to his civil rights legacy and things like that, that I think it's fitting that he's in one of the two. As someone who's had a conversation with him and know his legacy through Metro government and through civil rights history here in Nashville, and giving his history to Bellevue, I think that's a honorable recommendation. Same thing with Mr. Lawson. We all know through naming the civil rights, the John Lewis Way and having the celebration afterwards and him being one of the keynote speakers at that event, it's undeniable his legacy and his history to the city of Nashville and what he has done. And so it was interesting when I was trying to kind of put my head around the options. I kind of fell through the same part of Bellevue because of the tradition of naming after the thing, Cecil Bransford and James Lawson. But I think as we go into this day and age, we really have to think through of what we're doing. And I would love if we could somehow do a compromise between the two men, just because their histories and their legacy also intersects one another. Obviously through Attorney Bransford's representing the people in the sit-ins, Reverend Lawson also teaching the methods and the strategies behind the civils and civil rights. Nashville would not be where it is today without either of those two men. And so it's hard to measure one legacy against the other just because
They're intertwined.
yes, they're intertwined. And yes, and so I think I just want to put that for the record that someone who knew of Cecil Bransford's legacy before I even knew you and our relationship with you, I think that's something to acknowledge. So I just want to really just put that on the record. And James Lawson, I think it's a new point of when we have school and education or history and that legacy, how are we also looking into the future and fulfilling a vision, a future of people who have really gone through the tough struggles of leadership when it was not popular, when it was not safe, and really had to go through some hard times and sacrificed and made some deep sacrifices and had some penalties put against him because of his beliefs and had to really stand on that. And so I just really want to put that on the record of these two men and the legacy, and hopefully we can continue, whoever we choose, we'll be able to honor both in some shape, form, or fashion within our government system, whether it be Metro schools or any other method, because both these two gentlemen had a profound effect on Nashville and on where we are today and how the school board's made up, and for us to be leaders of who we are today. At least for me, I can speak for myself. That's what I have for the moment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, I'll say, Mr. Little, do you have your hand up? You do. Thank you, Mr. Little. You can go ahead.
I think it's amazing that we can sit at a board and have a conversation about two men who in 10 years or 50 years will still be remembered for the good things that they do. And a lot of times in my lifetime, we find names of schools, names of buildings who represent men who definitely don't need to go down in history and be honored like that. And so I'm glad we're having this conversation. I wish there was something that we could do for the both of them. When I think about just where we are in this country, just as we think about racism, wouldn't it be an honor to represent both men and put it out front to show black and white, and as we transition into a new country with Latino, that the community came together to do something great for two men who made a very big mark in our city and in history. So I don't know what that means, but as Frida was talking, that's what came to my mind.
And as a board member, you can recommend Lawson Granstetter.
Oh, okay. I'm going to make a motion.
I'm going to say again, you are a board member, John. You have this.
I didn't want to, it's been a long naming committee that's garnered a lot of community support, and I do appreciate me being on the board, but I don't want to overstep the community support and feedback. I've gotten emails about it, I've gotten calls, and so that's why I would refrain, because it just was not in the process.
So we dictate the process. There's not a time frame. Am I correct, Mrs. Elrod? I'm sure we would prefer to move quickly, but again, as a board member, you can at least recommend or ask questions and see what, because this is new territory for all of us, so it's okay that we're just figuring it out as we go.
I have a recommendation, and I will make a motion as I look out into the community.
So I got to pause.
Oh, sorry.
No, but this is part of the discussion, so you can ask maybe questions of our policy director or kind of understand what next steps might look like. And then once we either vote on this motion or if we amend the motion, I mean, there are a couple of different things we could do.
I honestly don't think it would water it down if we had a recommendation that we both honor both men as we think about Lawson Branstetter High School, because it carries a story of togetherness, the history of Nashville. And I would love if we can go back into the community for at least a week or two or the next board meeting and say, this is where we are, and get feedback. And then if the feedback isn't good, we just go with Plan B.
May I? Here is my my response. My current conversations of course, I made the motion for us to have this school name, and which is the current motion on the board floor, James Lawson High. Though it is not up to us as the school board, I do think that it is within our capacity, and I would encourage us to lobby city council. I think it is easy for us to say that we think it's worthwhile to name the street that the school is on after Mr. Branstetter. And I think that is a wise compromise and a good way of setting that tone. It is frankly already a conversation that I've been having and will continue to do so. I think that they are both worthwhile. Personally, I have, from the very beginning of my time on the board, have wanted us to have schools named after people. Nashville has a rich history, and I've always championed that we name our schools after those people, particularly those that have been underrepresented within our city, but that have represented our city the best. And so if they've been historically overlooked, that is my desire, that our schools are named after those people. And of course, as Abigail was so thorough to give us a great history of Dr. Lawson, he was an architect of the civil rights movement, particularly here in Nashville, and with his philosophy of nonviolent protest. So I appreciate the Bellevue community supporting and looking into this name and providing it to us as a suggestion. I think it's a wise option, and that I think it's also befitting that this school is going to be a beacon for not only Nashville, but for all of the state. It's going to be a beautiful, incredible facility, and it's going to be a really impressive, just complex. And I think it is befitting that we name that also after Dr. Lawson. But I do think it's worthwhile for us, though, again, it's not in our purview, it is worthwhile of our time to talk to the council about us representing and honoring Mr. Branstetter. And it is not surprising to me that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and that Abigail has taken his legacy of public service to heart and continues to champion those things. So I think that is a worthwhile, not only for us as a colleague, but also just in good standing and in good moral standing. All right, is there any other discussion? Oh, yes, Ms. Player Peters.
You can see my hand in the camera. So I think with that kind of notion, if we could, I say, I'm not changing your motion, Ms. Elrod, but that we recommend James Lawson and have the school be on Branstetter Way. And so I think after we finish discussing and resolving this motion, we can have a discussion of doing a resolution or a motion to naming the street after Attorney Branstetter. And then so we'll have, I think it'll be a good sentiment to have, James Lawson High School on Cecil Branstetter Way. And so we can acknowledge both demands. And then also, forgive me, I haven't been to the site in a while. So even if we can, we can name a road that's in Bellevue after someone who lived there and had have a long legacy thing. Oh, wow. Okay, that was very eloquent and intelligent.
I understand. I do want to have a point of clarification. Are you saying that you want to do that resolution directly after this vote or at a future meeting?
I'll do a motion after the vote, and we can do a resolution at the rest of the meeting. Does that make sense?
We do have another meeting.
All right. I'm going to let's take a vote on this motion to name the school James Lawson High School. Chair Bug seconded it?
Yes, I
So
seconded.
all those in favor, raise your hand. Yes? All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I hope you can see me on the TV. I can see my hand in the corner. Thank you. All opposed? 0 opposed. And we have 1 abstention.
Recusal, I'm not sure if that's different. I'm not sure if a recusal is counted differently than,
Oh, that's true. So thank you for clarifying. I apologize. I apologize for that confusion of terminology. All right. We will follow up because I know, yes,
I'll make
Miss.
a motion that we, at a further meeting, make a resolution to name the street that James Lawson High School after Cecil Branstetter Way.
Okay. I will follow up on that and I will put that as a future meeting note and we'll follow up with you individually as well on that scheduling.
Can I ask a question? Just I think it would take 2 minutes if we can just do it now. I mean, unless we have discussion, because I don't want to take away from PAC.
I know we just have to develop the language of the resolution.
Oh, okay.
That's typically at least a,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. May I add one thing? I just wanted to,
Yes.
I want to acknowledge that Bellevue High School was a name that had a lot of support behind it from the community. And as I had already said, I would be proud and excited for my children to graduate from a school named Bellevue High School. And this is not in any way a slight against it. I will speak for Bellevue High School you've heard what I said, I'm at every single word of it. My heart lives in Bellevue. It was born there, it was raised there. I love that area. I am proud to raise my children in that area. And I do not want anybody to feel like this is a slight against Bellevue because it is not at all. So I need to make sure that I know feelings will be hurt, and in some ways I'm kind of sad that my kids won't have Bellevue High School, but I also see the value in the larger picture. So I know that I couldn't be part of that. I could not undo myself from my own family history, but I am proud of Bellevue, and I would be honored for the school to be named James Lawson if that's what we're going to do.
Okay. Thank you. Be there no further business, we will adjourn this so we can have the PAC meeting. Thank you.